And we've got our weekly top 5 from Bet365 here. Now, this is a pretty specific list. There are a lot of restraints to it, but we're looking at the top 5 individual seasons from players currently in the Avs core. Couple of things here. I did not include playoffs in these seasons, but we will talk about that. And obviously it's this core because if we included all of Avs history, it would just be 5 seasons from Joe Sakic and Peter Forsberg. So that's not necessarily true, but we'll get to that at the top of the list. Starting with number 5, which is Nathan McKinnon's 18-19 season. There's a couple of different factors that I got into here. But this one was, I believe, his 99-point season, right?
Yes.
Am I remembering correctly?
I have this as my number 5 as well.
Okay. Well, at least I got one right.
Not necessarily.
Look, McKinnon's real big breakout came in 17-18, which is also on this list. But the 18-19 season was the first 40-goal season for the Avs since Hayduk scored 50 in 02-03. And I think it was really the season that established Nathan McKinnon as a true superstar in the NHL. After what had been more or less a decade of Avalanche not really having that guy. They had obviously gone through a handful of iterations of guys they thought might be that guy. Duchesne, a perfect example. But Mac was finally the guy. Yeah, you could say that it was about 17-18 too, but the 18-19 is the one for me that established it as not just a one-off for him. So maybe I'm giving him too much credit for something that's supposed to be an individual season, but the 40 goals for me is what got it on this list at 5. AJ, you're smiling about something over there.
Hey, you said it's the 40 goals that did it for you, but the season before he had 39.
Yeah, but
and it was like all he needed was that one, and we could have maybe he would have won the Hart that year.
Well, that's my number 4 is that season, so that one did end up higher on the list for me, and that is more because of the team around him. Not that the team around him was bad. Obviously, he still had Mikko. He still had Landeskog. His line was very, very good. But the Avs were much more of the meme at the time was that they're a one-line team, right? And while they did have other good players, their success and failure was much, much more reliant on Nathan McKinnon at that time. So as an individual season, I do think that one was a bit more impressive than his 99-point year. But
yeah, do you know who the 6th highest scoring Av on that team was? The 17-18 one?
The 6th highest? I doubt it.
Yeah, so it would have been their 6th forward. Yeah, it was Blake Como with 34 points.
Yikes.
Jared Bednar, security blanket. Well, and honestly, that was a break glass in case of emergency kind of security blanket because that team was in response to the 48-point season, and there was probably a lot of fear. But I think that's why I respect what it was for Nathan McKinnon specifically. That's the season that he had met with a sports psychologist and then had finally broke through the 50-point mark after hovering around it for the seasons just before it, after what was an incredible rookie year. And then as your number 5, though, as the season that follows that 2017-2018 season, the sustained success, like you mentioned, solidified or had him settle into that role. I think it was his 3rd year as an alternate captain. You start to see the leadership on the ice through his play, and he had a lot of productivity in the playoffs specifically, and this is perhaps a villain origin story for Nathan McKinnon, where the second round exits start to haunt him on a personal level, despite 13 points in 12 games in that playoff series, that 2018-2019 year.
So, is Nathan McKinnon a villain? We're talking about origin story.
You're right. I don't know why I made him a villain automatically.
He is in Edmonton.
Yeah, that's true.
That's
definitely a villain in some cities.
You're right.
Yeah.
And the season finale was the Western Conference Final.
Number 3, we move away from McKinnon for a little bit. I have Kale's 21-22 season. If you include the playoffs, it's without a doubt the best season of any Avalanche defenseman ever. Even without it, I think you can make an argument for that. Kale's special. I am expecting this to not last as one of his best seasons, or certainly not his best season. I think there's probably more to come from that guy, but he just does things that other people don't. I don't know. We've talked about it plenty. I don't have a ton to say about Kale, but it's wild how, as a defenseman, he's even in this conversation, let alone on the list as high as he is.
Yeah, and I think it's also, I think, a testament to what's 1 and 2 on this list, because that year from Makar was so special. He was on a totally different level, and that was the season that we had people in our chat that were like convinced Cale Makar was scoring 40 goals that year, which I mean was always overly ambitious, but that was like that was the possibility of Cale Makar. He could get you to dream on him like that, and he's such a special player that I don't even want to say I will guarantee that he doesn't score 40
ever
in his career.
He might do it.
I don't want to discount that. It's going to be obscenely difficult for a defenseman to do, but that season will always be, I mean, for a lot of reasons, obviously, very magical, but Makar's performance that year is undoubtedly, for me, the best we've ever seen in an Avs uniform from a defenseman, which is pretty high praise given the couple of guys who have come through town during their
Hall
careers.
of Famers on that list, yeah.
Yeah, couple of pretty good players in their time. So very, very special.
All right. Number 2, the other guy that's not Nathan McKinnon on this list, Mikko Rantanen. Last season, 105 points, his first 100-point season, but more importantly, 55 goals, the Colorado Avalanche record for regular season goal scoring, and really a season that brought Mikko's game to a new level, not necessarily because he's going to produce at this rate forever and this is who he is, but he showed the ability when Nathan McKinnon was out this year to be that guy, be the number one, be the true production leader for a hockey team.
It's, a lot of pressure was put on Mikko Rantanen last year, and he answered the call. I think that it was where we really saw Mikko Rantanen grow up as a player, not only in the high-level production that he was able to bring to the Avs when they were experiencing team-wide scoring woes, but also the growth in his leadership contributions to the team. It was something we watched unfold in real time, too, because there were learning lessons, moments where he regretted how he handled something on ice, but he took so much accountability, not just personally, but for the team's success and failures along the way, and notched 105 points doing it. There's a lot of credit due to Mikko Rantanen and the breakthrough he had last year, and the hopefulness that we have surrounding McKinnon and what kind of year he's capable of coming out with on the heels of how last season ended. Same is true for Mikko Rantanen. I'm excited to see how he responds to last season.
Yeah, I think that the you mentioned having all the pressure that was placed on him because all the injuries around him forced him to play a role that he just it's not fair to put on any NHL player when you're looking around and just like, do I have any help here? Like, what's going on? And you look at him taking that increased ownership of it, and you can even look at some of the numbers and just see how that bore fruit, because it's not just the 55 goals or the 50 assists, but it's also that his shot generation. It's the first time he's ever broken 300 shots on goal in his career, and the Avs needed that from him. They had to have that in order for them to win that division. They needed him to be a guy that he had never been before. And it wasn't like, hey, it would be nice if he stepped into this role. It would be great. They had to have it. And I think that it's such a testament to who he is as a player that a guy that before last season you could look at and say, yeah, his career looks like it's on a Hall of Fame track right now. He's a point per game player. He's a prolific goal scorer. He has a Stanley Cup under his belt. He's got a long career ahead of him, a very, very prolific career ahead of him. You could look at it and say he's already that caliber of player. But when his team really needed him to dig deep, he dug deeper than we've seen, and he pulled out his very, very best. And that carried over into the postseason, where he was very good in that playoff series against Seattle at times. Like, he was really, really, really special at times in that series, where I just it sucks that this season ended the way that it did and will be remembered as such, because it almost feels like what a waste of the 2 years from these two guys, and especially this 50 goal season from Mikko. You know, he's always been a really high percentage shooter, much higher than your average Bear, but even for him, throwing up an 18% shooting season is real high. For a guy with 300 shots on goal, that's a hard combination to replicate. But watching him kind of step into that role the way that he did, and be the engine of the offense, while there was not just no McKinnon, but a lot of guys. It was extremely impressive, and Rudo mentioned McKinnon at 27, 28, going into the heart of his career, heart of his prime right now. So is Mikko. And if that means there's more to come from Mikko, oh my
God. Question off the top. I know you guys won't know off the top of your head the ones you're comparing it to necessarily. Is this Mikko season and the season we're about to talk about, which I'm assuming you guys will know, top 5 all-time Avalanche seasons? Because there's 2 Joe Sakic seasons, 120, 118 points, that are probably pretty untouchable on there. There's Peter Forsberg, who has 2 seasons, 95, 96, when he scored 116 points, it was, I think. And then his MVP season in 02, 03. And then there's a 5th spot there, which probably goes to our number 1, which is Nathan McKinnon from 22-23 as well, is 111 points. It was just shy of 130 point pace, I think, if he played a full 82 games. I will confidently say that McKinnon's season is a top 5 all-time Avalanche season. Is Mikko's?
Not for me, but
okay.
I would probably have it at like 6. Like,
sure.
It's not. It's you're splitting hairs at that point. You're talking about true greatness, the elite of the elite, like the best performances from some all-time great players. So I don't feel like it's denigrating the season that Mikko just had to not have it top 5 in Avalanche history, and to just allow that maybe it's the 6th best. But for me, it's probably not top 5.
Fair enough. Megan?
It's hovering around the 6th spot, but perhaps even honorably getting the 5th. And my reason for it being today's NHL and the evolution of today's NHL goaltender making a 50-goal season, I think that much more difficult to do. That deserves some credit in the individual success of Rantanen specifically there. And just given the context of the injuries of that season, I think it adds so much more heightened value to what Mikko Rantanen provided, not only in the production, but also the leadership aspect as well.
Yes, Patrick Waugh, you could definitely make some arguments for, chat. But also, this list does not include playoffs, which is where Waugh was at his best. So, going to be tough for him to get on this list when we're not including playoffs. I think you could probably make a real case for 13-14 Varlamov as well. But, a whole bunch of dudes who didn't win awards. Just like McKinnon and Mikko don't win awards.
The Lady Bing, though.
Yeah. But just to get back to the guy at the top, Nathan McKinnon, he makes up 3 of the 5 spots on this list. If there was any doubt about how good he's been and how important he's been to the Colorado Avalanche of this generation. I'll ask you again. I think you guys have already answered it, but let's say the next 3 years. Does Nathan McKinnon have a better season than 22-23?
If he stays healthy, yes.
Okay.
And if I'm measuring individual success, I'm still leaning towards yes, but I think this is a team with another cup in them. And so I think that if he has like 107-point season and gets a cup, I think that will trump the work of what he did last year. And I think that this team has it in them. And I think McKinnon just continues to pull another rabbit out of the hat that I just still think that's possible for him to have more success than last year.
If he win, I know we didn't include playoffs, but if he wins a Hart, that would
really help.
Not a Hart, a Conn Smythe rather.
A Conn Smythe would really help.
It was Makar's playoffs that. Getting off topic here, but the 22 run, where would you rate Makar's playoff performance in Avs history?
Off the top of my head, probably 2 or 3.
So not number 1.
I think Sakic's 96 is probably number 1.
Okay.
And then Waz 2001.
Sure.
Would also have to be there because they just don't win. They don't win that cup final against the Devils without Wah.
No doubt.
Being just insane in that series.
Fair enough. Was just curious on that one where it might fall.
It's really close though. It's really close.
Is there anyone that can challenge this list in Colorado right now? And like, obviously it would take something pretty extraordinary, but if everything goes right, could a Val Nichushkin get on this list? Could a Bo Byram threaten this list as a top 5 season of this generation of the Avs?
I think Georgiev
that's a good call.
Be somebody
that's a good call.
Makes a case for this list. Now, I don't want that to be necessary of Georgiev to have that type of performance that requires him to be the guy. But if he has to be the guy, and he is, that's going to be really compelling for him. And I really love the first year that he had here in Colorado. I'm excited that he's a starting option for them for a few more years to come while they're in this window of McKinnon and Rantanen really hitting a stride, which feels even silly to say because of who they've been before.
I think Meghan has it with Georgiev.
Okay.
As much as I think Byram could be unbelievable, Devon Taves' 21-22 season, he had like 57 points in like 70 games or something, and was arguably a top 5 defenseman in the NHL, and he's not
a consideration.
Yeah, and it's like if Bo Byram had a season like that, we'd all be falling about the place, freaking out and losing our shit.
Yeah.
And he's not even on the list. Like I don't even know where that season would rank. So I think it's really, really, really hard for another skater to break this list because I just don't know that there's another caliber there. And Makar's opportunity and just otherworldly ability is going to cannibalize some of that.
It's true.
Some of the ability for a guy to have a season of that caliber, because it's a little tougher for defensemen to do it. But Georgiev, I think absolutely. Yeah, I'm with Meghan. I think Georgiev is the guy that has the best chance to break into that list, because we saw last year he was pretty unflappable, pretty consistent throughout the entire season, and if he gets even just a little bit better, oh boy, like he gets just a little bit better, he could be one of the top guys around.
All right, well, when the future's as bright as this, you got to be sure to be wearing your Shady Rays, as that was the top 5 by Bet365, by the way.